Never Not Funny is a weekly podcast hosted by comedian Jimmy Pardo since spring 2006. He and producer, co-host Matt Belknap have appeared in every episode. Former co-host Mike Schmidt appeared for all of Season 1, except for episode 60 when his departure was announced. The show moved to a pay format in March 2008, with the first 20 minutes of each show remaining available to non-paying subscribers. It subsequently returned to free distribution when it joined the Earwolf Network in January 2014, with a premium subscription available for access to video and weekly bonus episodes. Episodes from past seasons are also commercially available. Show format. The show is of the comedy talk variety, consisting of free-form conversation between Jimmy Pardo, Matt Belknap and a third, weekly changing guest. Topics discussed range from music and popular culture to personal lives and amusing or interesting anecdotes. Starting with Season 3, the last 5 to 20 minutes were dedicated to a listener-submitted, stupid question of the week. The segment has since been retired. At the beginning of Season 5, a new segment called Judge Jimmy was introduced, in which the cast settled a listener-submitted dispute with Pardo as judge and Belknap and the guest as the attorneys. Until the end of the third season, the show was recorded in a single take without any editing. After the Chino, CA earthquake in August 2008 forced the show to stop briefly, the podcast has had one small break per episode. History. Never Not Funny began when Matt Belknap interviewed Pardo on the podcast for his popular alternative comedy forum A Special Thing. The two had previously discussed producing a podcast version of Jimmy's Los Angeles show, Running Your Trap, which he hosted at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater. But they hit it off so well on Ast Radio that Pardo said, "This is the show." The first episode featured Pardo, Belknap, and guest Mike Schmidt. Pat Francis was scheduled for episode 2, but when he was unavailable, Schmidt became the permanent co-host. This arrangement continued for the first season. Every fourth episode would feature a guest such as Pat Francis, Scott Aukerman or Graham Elwood. Midway through the first season, the theme song was changed from a brief portion of an unnamed instrumental song by Jimmy's close friend Dava to "Mad at the World" by Dava, with sound bites from previous episodes mixed into the song. This three-man setup lasted for 60 episodes, including a clip show and 2 live shows recorded at the UCB Theatre. The show went through little change throughout the first season until episode 60. When Jimmy announced that his relationship with Mike Schmidt had become strained through the years and that they had decided to go their separate ways, Schmidt left the show in an attempt to reconcile their friendship. Mike explained the situation on May 25, 2007, on his website. In March 2008, Mike started his own solo podcast named The 40-Year-Old Boy. At the end of Season 6, Schmidt made his first return to the podcast, this time as a guest, when Pardo decided life's too short. Following Schmidt's departure, the show began its second season. Instead of the former three-man lineup, Pardo and Belknap appeared as the only regulars, along with a rotating guest every episode. Pat Francis was the guest for the first episode of the second season, which began the tradition of Francis being the third chair and appearing on every fourth episode. It was in the second season that the show received its first sponsorship, lasting only a few weeks. On episode 39 of the second season, it was announced that the show would move to a pay format beginning with Season 3. Listeners would have to pay to continue receiving the complete podcast, although the first 20 minutes of each episode would still be available for free. The subscription price was set to $19.99 for 26 episodes. They also hired Pardo's brother-in-law Andrew Koenig to record video of the show. Only 5-minute clips of the show were available on video during Season 3, which were hosted on Koenig's site Monkey Go Lucky. But beginning with Season 4, full video of the show became available for $24.99. Midway through season 6, tragedy struck when Andrew Koenig died. An episode was released in remembrance, highlighting some of Koenig's best moments throughout his time on the show, and Pardo has since memorialized Koenig at the close of every episode with the parting words, AK-47, gone, not forgotten. Andrew's close friend Elliot Hochberg, who had been providing the video equipment, assumed his role as videographer. Shortly afterwards they hired an intern, Dan Katz, aka Tabasco Ears. Katz left the show at the beginning of season 11 and was replaced by pop culture beast editor Garen Cockrell, aka The Beast, shortly after. On episode 1325, it was announced that at the beginning of season 14, Never Not Funny would change to a free show in audio format. Plus, Never Not Funny would also join the Earwolf podcast network, co-owned by Scott Aukerman. Full audio would be available on Earwolf, iTunes and NNF's feed, while video of the episodes were part of the new Players Club package for Primo subscribers. Subscribers of the Players Club would also get an additional weekly episode, plus bonus material such as live shows. Podcast-a-thon. A mini-episode was released at the beginning of season 6 that announced Never Not Funny would be doing a live streaming podcast on their website to raise money in benefit of Smile Train. The first annual Podcast-a-thon took place on Black Friday 2009. Pardo, Belknap and Francis welcomed guests such as Chris Hardwick, John Hamm and Rich Sommer from Mad Men and Oscar Nunez. By the end of the night, they raised over $12,000. The next year at Podcast-a-thon 2010, they changed the venue to the Acme Comedy Theatre and went 12 hours instead of 9 to give even more of a telethon vibe. At the end of the night at 6 a.m., they raised $27,000. Guests included Rob Corddry, Sarah Silverman, Amy Mann and Andy Richter. For Podcast-a-thon 2011, the setup was the same as the previous year. Guests included Amy Poehler, Lisa Loeb, Walter Koenig and Adam Carolla. By the end of the event, the amount of money raised was almost double the previous year's total with $41,000. Podcast-a-thon 2012 was expected to the biggest to date with a goal of $50,000 by the end of the night. The hours were changed to 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. PST so people on the East Coast could stay up later and donate more. Guests included Bob Saget, Conan O'Brien, Simon Helberg, Kevin Nealon, Colin Hay and Zach Galifianakis. The goal of $50,000 was not only raised after 13.5 hours, but midway through an anonymous donor said they would match the end total, making the grand total over $100,000. The fifth annual Podcast-a-thon went by with flying colors, with the guys raising over $130,000 by the end of the night. Wayne Faderman sat in for the whole event playing music on keyboard. Guests included Patton Oswalt, Jack Wagner, Phil Hendry, Zach Galifianakis, Bob Odenkirk and Andy Richter. Podcast-a-thon 2014 was just as successful as the previous year, if not more. With Faderman as the house band again, Jimmy and the gang raised a record $156,000 over the night. Guests included Weird Al Yankovic, Jack McBrayer, Paul Dooley, Fred Willard, Billy Eichner, Patton Oswalt, Sarah Silverman and more. Jimmy and Matt stated in a season 16 episode that the 7th annual Podcast-a-thon will not take place on Black Friday 2015, due to scheduling conflicts in the past. The 7th annual Podcast-a-thon will take place on March 5, 2016. Awards. Never Not Funny was the winner of 2008 Rooftop Comedy Award for Best Comedy Podcast. Never Not Funny was nominated for a 2007 Podcast Award in the comedy category. Never Not Funny was nominated for a 2006 Weblog Award. Never Not Funny was made one of iTunes' Best in 2006 and Best in 2007 podcasts. List of guests. This is a dynamic list and may never be able to satisfy particular standards for completeness. You can help by expanding it with reliably sourced entries.